The woman who had become America's sweetheart looked like she was afraid of her own heart. Jennifer Aniston sat across from Jimmy Fallon in Studio 6B, her legendary warmth somehow guarded, as if the love that had made her beloved by millions was something she'd never quite learned to give to herself. They'd been playing Real Relationships, a Tonight Show game where celebrities discussed love, connection, and authenticity. For Jennifer, it had become a reckoning with patterns she'd carried for decades. "Jennifer, here's a beautiful question," Jimmy had said with his usual warmth, though there was obvious affection in his voice. "You've been open about your journey with relationships and self-discovery. What's the most important thing you've learned about love, both giving it and receiving it?" The question should have been perfect for Jennifer. Here was a woman who had navigated public relationships with grace, who had turned personal struggles into wisdom, who had become a symbol of resilience. This should have been a moment of hard-earned insight and inspiration. Instead, Jimmy watched as one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses began to quietly unravel. "Jimmy?" Jennifer said, her voice missing its usual confident charm. "That's exactly what I'm still trying to figure out. Because I'm starting to think I don't actually know how to love or be loved. I think I just know how to perform love." The studio fell silent, sensing that whatever was coming would reveal something profound about the hidden cost of always being everyone's favorite person. "I've spent my entire life trying to be the good person, the easy person, the person everyone likes," Jennifer continued, her voice carrying a weight that surprised everyone. "And somewhere in that process, I lost track of who I actually am when no one's watching." The confession hung in the studio air, like an admission that being beloved could be its own form of isolation. The audience, expecting warm stories about friendship and romance, instead found themselves witnessing something much more vulnerable, their sweetheart admitting she was still searching for herself. Jimmy felt his entertainment instincts immediately give way to concern. "What do you mean you perform love?" Jennifer looked down at her hands. Hands that had gestured through countless scenes of friendship and romance. Hands that had comforted co-stars and fans alike. And when she looked back up, her eyes carried something that devastated her, uncertainty about her own authenticity. "I mean, I've gotten so good at being what other people need that I don't know what I need," she said, her voice becoming smaller, more uncertain. "In relationships, I become this version of myself that I think will make them happy, that will make them stay. But then I resent them for not seeing the real me, even though I never showed them the real me." The cameras continued rolling, but everyone in Studio 6B understood they were witnessing something unprecedented, one of Hollywood's most genuine personas, revealing the exhausting effort of maintaining that genuineness. Jimmy made a decision that would define this moment. He stood up from his desk and moved to sit directly next to Jennifer, understanding that this conversation required safety, not spectacle. "Where do you think that pattern started?" Jimmy asked gently. "With my mother," Jennifer said immediately. "Growing up, love was conditional. I got attention when I was good, when I was helpful. When I was difficult or needy, there was withdrawal, criticism, coldness. So I learned that love was earned by being perfect, by never causing problems, by always putting other people's needs first." Jimmy leaned closer, sensing the depth of the childhood programming Jennifer was describing. "How does that show up in your relationships now?" "It shows up everywhere," Jennifer admitted, her voice cracking. "I can't have a fight with someone I love without immediately going into damage control mode. I can't express a need or disappointment without following it up with, 'but it's okay,' or 'don't worry about it,' or 'I'm probably being too sensitive.'" The audience was completely silent, many recognizing their own patterns in Jennifer's words. "A few months ago, someone I was dating canceled our plans last minute for the third time. I was hurt, but instead of saying, 'This isn't working for me,' I said, 'Oh, no problem, I understand.' Then I spent the whole night angry at him for not reading my mind and knowing I was upset. She looked out at the audience. Do you see how crazy that is? I was mad at him for not seeing through the performance I was giving. I was punishing him for believing the lies I was telling about being fine with treatment that actually hurt me. Jimmy felt his heart break for the woman sitting next to him. That must be exhausting. It is, Jennifer said simply, because when you're always performing being okay, you never get to find out if someone would love you when you're not okay. You never get to test whether the relationship can handle your actual human emotions. Jimmy was quiet for a moment, absorbing the weight of what Jennifer was sharing. What would it look like to not perform? To just be yourself, even if that self isn't always easy or pleasant? Jennifer looked genuinely frightened by the question. I don't know, she admitted. What if the real me isn't likable? What if I'm too much, too needy? I've built my career on being America's sweetheart. But what if that's just another performance? What if people wouldn't love me if they knew about the anger I carry, the resentment, the hurt I've never processed? Can I ask you something? Jimmy said softly. When you think about the people you love most in your life, do you love them because they're perfect? No, Jennifer said immediately. I love them because of their flaws, their struggles, their humanity. I love them more when they're vulnerable with me, when they trust me with their imperfections. So, why do you think other people are different? Jimmy asked. Why do you think they need you to be perfect when you don't need them to be? For the first time in the conversation, Jennifer looked genuinely surprised, as if no one had ever pointed out this contradiction before. She paused, clearly processing something she'd never considered. I guess I never thought of it that way. I've been operating from this belief that I'm the exception, that everyone else gets to be human, but I have to be superhuman to be worthy of love. Jimmy reached over and placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. What if you experimented with being disappointing? What if you let yourself have bad days, express needs, set boundaries, even if it made someone uncomfortable? That terrifies me, Jennifer admitted, because what if they leave? What if being real means being alone? And what if staying fake means being alone anyway? Jimmy countered gently. What if you're already alone, surrounded by people who love a version of you that doesn't really exist? Jennifer sat with that question for a moment, and something in her expression began to shift. The fear was still there, but it was being joined by something else. Possibility. You know what's crazy? Jennifer said, addressing the cameras directly. I've spent 30 years trying to be lovable, but I've never actually tested whether I'm lovable as I am. I've been so afraid of rejection that I rejected myself first. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. Maybe the reason my relationships haven't worked isn't because I'm not good enough. Maybe it's because I've never let anyone see who I really am when I'm not trying to be good enough. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To anyone watching who recognizes this in themselves, the need to be perfect, to never cause problems, to earn love through performance, maybe we can experiment with being human instead. Maybe we can find out if people love us for who we are, not just for who we think they need us to be. The studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't typical celebrity applause. It was recognition, gratitude from people who understood the exhaustion of constant performance. How does it feel to say that out loud? Jimmy asked. Terrifying and liberating, Jennifer admitted honestly, like I just gave myself permission to be disappointing, which feels both scary and like the most radical act of self-love I've ever attempted. Jimmy stood up and embraced Jennifer. Not a show business hug, but a real moment of human support and recognition. When they separated, he looked directly at her. Jennifer, thank you for showing us that being lovable isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to be real. Thank you for helping me realize that maybe the love I've been searching for starts with loving myself enough to be myself," Jennifer replied. 6 months later, Jennifer began working with a therapist specializing in attachment trauma and started setting boundaries while learning to express needs without minimizing them. The segment became one of the most shared pieces about authentic relationships and people-pleasing recovery. Relationship therapists credited Jennifer with advancing conversations about childhood trauma patterns in adult relationships. Jimmy later said the conversation changed how he thought about authenticity. "Jennifer taught me that the most loving thing we can do is trust people with our real selves." Jennifer continued being America's sweetheart while becoming her own sweetheart. She learned people didn't need her to be perfect. They needed her to be human. The woman who had spent her life earning love finally learned that love worth having was never earned. It was received by being courageously, imperfectly yourself.